So I'm John Duke. I'm on the NOFA Mass board. Been so for a couple of years, and today's session is with Julie Rawson. And this one is titled Raise the Highest Quality Food While Supporting Environmental Diversity. So I hope that's what you intended to sit in on. She's also doing another workshop this afternoon.
We're going to cook.
There you go. So NOFA Mass would like to honor the indigenous land stewards who are the original occupants of the land that we are currently living, farming, and residing. Please use this link to find the area that you farm and live in and identify the original stewards of those lands. Lastly, we want to call on everyone, especially white allies and co-conspirators, to action on a few items to assist BIPOC-led organizations. Those actions are listed on this slide. Also, there are 2 events taking place for Spanish speakers and for BIPOC members. I'd also like to bring your attention to our sponsors. Without them, we couldn't do a lot of the work that we do. Many of them have a booth over in our vendor area today, so definitely stop on by. I encourage you to support them and thank them for supporting NOFA Mass. I'd also like to remind you that we're doing an auction today. It's online, and again, a lot of the vendors and sponsors of our organization have put some pretty darn good items in there. And usually they go away for, less than retail. So take the opportunity to put in there and bid often and drive them up. And at the end of today, I wish I knew exactly where it was, but there are surveys for all these workshops. And we do value your input on the job that we're doing at these conferences and the content that we're bringing out. So if you get a chance, make a comment on those surveys if you could. And with that, I'm going to pass things off to Julie. I'm sure most of you know Julie because she's a legend, but she's been a farmer and an organizer for her entire life. She lives and works at Many Hands Organic Farm with her husband, Jack. They've got a myriad of staff and volunteers who help them raise most of the nutrient-dense food, the most nutrient-dense food that they can imagine. She spent 32 years as executive director?
36.
36. So Julie's kind of deeply entwined with NOFA. Ladies and gentlemen, Julie Rawson. And let me see if I can get these slides moved over.
Uh-oh, all of our tech left.
Oh, wait.
There you go.
Here we go.
Can you make it big?
Yes, I should be able to make it big. No.
Anybody out there in the audience know how to make it big? Come on, right?
Yeah. Oh. No, I gotta get out of this. There we go. And that. Yeah! Victory!
Okay.
You just give me a cue when you want me to advance.
All right. I like to, and over the years of farming, I like to always pick out the outstanding crops that happen. These don't happen every year. I think this was 2020, and this is our potato patch. And it wasn't actually that big. It was 5 rows that were about 100 feet long each. And we had no potato bugs that year. Had them subsequently again. It's like, okay, I got the potato bug figured out, so no problems in the future. But then we came back the next year. But that's the beauty of farming. It keeps us humble. So, yeah, go ahead. So these are some guiding principles that I want to talk about. One is that we can work miracles on our farms and gardens. But we have to remember that we are the junior partners with nature. You know, we can't come in and have our way with nature. We really have to do it in a fashion that is listening and watching and in all ways that we can, connecting with what the natural processes are. Healthy soil microbes are our highest goal when we're trying to raise good nutrient-dense food, because they're the drivers of the photosynthesis system. They are the ones underground, and they're the ones that support the growth above ground. So remembering also, whatever we want to do whatever makes these guys happy. Guys and girls. A healthy plant will be resistant to insects and disease. I think a lot of people don't believe that. They feel that, you know, we can get close maybe or make things healthier, but we really can't build resistance. And I'm a true believer that when systems are operating properly and the plants are at their highest photosynthetic capacity and highest nutrition, that they will be resistant to insects and disease. And so that's where I'm always moving in that direction. When I find that we do have an infestation of something, it's not that I've lost hope that these plants can be resistant, it's that I recognize that I have done something wrong, usually not attended to what I need to attend to and make that happen. An exceptionally healthy plant confers that health to the eater. So once we are raising, the reason why we want to raise all this really good food is so that we can be healthy. It's a really wonderful symbiotic relationship. Once we eat these highly nutritious plants that are full of plant secondary metabolites and minerals and vitamins and vibrancy, that's going to confer onto us or onto our animals if we're raising animals. And biodiversity is a key part of this whole picture. So monocropping is not something that's done in nature. And so we are smart if we don't monocrop.
Recording in progress.
Can you turn the page?
Yes.
So I just want to give you a little rundown of our practices to get you a sense of where we come from and our base operating procedure every year. We have been certified organic since 1987. I think we're one of the oldest now certified farms, probably in New England and maybe in the country, maybe California. There were some certified farms before that. But we can, every year I said, I'm not going to do this again. You know, I fill out all these forms, it costs too much money. But anyway, we're still certified. We do about 2 acres of vegetables very intensively. We have about 100 fruit trees. We do 250 meat birds a year. That's one batch. We do 125 turkeys, 200 layers. It's a batch of 100 each. So we rotate. We bring a new batch in every year, and then at the end of that next year, the chickens are slaughtered, and then we make them into soup. And this year we're going to raise 6 pigs. We have about 7 acres of grassland that's variably hay for our mulch systems, or it's also our pasture. Our chickens are all on pasture, and turkeys are all on pasture, and pigs are somewhat too, but they're usually around the edges. But I'll talk about them in a minute. In the woods, we have about 44 acres. Gross revenue in 2022 was about 120,000. So you get a sense of we're kind of a, you know, mid-size Massachusetts farm, organic farm, but not that big. Mineral balancing soil amendments as per soil test annually. So we use Logan Labs, get a soil test, and then, you know, with our consultants from AEA, the Advancing Eco Agriculture people, they're here at the conference. You should go talk to them if you don't know who they are. They work with us and help us get, you know, our amendments down. We don't use any tillage equipment. We sold our rototiller in 2014 when we went to a NOFA conference in Ram State, who's a wonderful. And so, were you there, Mary? I wasn't, I wish I was. 2014, we had our soil nutrition conference with the BFA, and he said, organic farmers have to save the world. And so get on it. And one of the things you can do is, get rid of your road chipper. So we did. We have a tractor and rotary and hand mowers, and we use the road hoe, and I'll show you a picture of that later, but we don't use a whole lot of equipment. We are very hand operated. I'll probably get to that a little later. Heavy usage of mulch in season, cardboard, hay chips, leaves, straw, corn stalks. If you're on the Cape, lots of, or on the ocean, you've got seaweed at your disposal. You're so lucky to have that. Even though your soil's pretty shitty on the Cape.
Hey. I'm from down there.
Yourself. Cover crops wherever possible, in season, pre-season, post-season. So cover crops are wonderful soil builders, and we should always have them growing as much as you possibly can. And a bunch of them, diversity of them. Silage tarps have been kind of our ace in the hole in the last 2-3 years, because that no-till actually has been rather hard for us to accomplish. But the silage tarps are helping us get closer to that goal of having no-till and also not having a lot of grass, or losing crops to the weeds taking over. Animal integration, post-crop, followed by cover crops. We do a lot of that. This year we brought it to a new level. And perennial strips to maximize biodiversity. So central mass is, you guys don't have much fertility on the Cape, but we don't have much soil in central mass. And where we are anyway, northern central mass. I suppose where you are, Sarah, you probably don't have a lot of soil either. It's similar, right?
I have plenty of rocks.
Yeah. Rocks, trees, and swamp, Jack always says. So anyway, where was I? Why was I talking about that? Oh, so we have a lot of perennials around us. We are surrounded by woods. We're on both sides of the road, but we have woods on both sides, and we have our stone walls are loaded with all sorts of perennials, and we have perennials in our system. So it's a nice, diverse system. And then extensive use of liquid fertility at planting, weekly foliar applications, minerals, biostimulants, biologicals, and we get all that stuff from the Grants for Agriculture. And this guy, John Kempf, who I think now is like 36, maybe? He's been at it for a long, long time. Conventional farmer, conventional Amish farmer in Ohio. And he brought his whole family over to this incredible understanding of agriculture, regenerative agriculture. But he's a real savant. He worked with some of the best minds of people from my generation and older who really helped him develop these wonderful products. So we use a lot of those. Okay, next. Our general soil test notes, our organic matter is pretty high. We started what we moved on to was part of an old farm, and it was really spent hayfields. And a lot of what happens with hayfields in a kind of a marginal farming system is someone comes in and cuts the hay once or twice a year, and that's that. And it's one of the best ways to destroy soil out there after tillage, actually. So it was pretty spent. We actually had a resting organic matter of about 5, which I know is again really high for those of you on the Cape, but it's now I don't know, it's just something you have to manage for. That's all. Now it's more like 10 to 12, and try to really keep a really high organic matter. Our phosphorus is in great abundance. The pH is ideal, 6.4 to 6.8, and that's after working on that. Magnesium is a constant. We're slow on that, and we're a little low on potassium. So those are the things that we're struggling with in our system. These are the things that, again, this is something that you really have to work on your system and see what your story is. But these are the dry amendments that we're adding this year. ProGrow, North Country Organics is a company that, and they're in Vermont. We used to buy their fertilizer a long, long time ago, like back in the 80s, early 80s. And there was a period where there was a real excitement about, and I suppose there still is, about compost and, what I want to say, industrial, growing it, making compost on an industrial scale, and farmers using it. As a lot of people still do that, but we went through this period where we actually kind of got bit by that bug and used some of this compost from this place called Mass Natural in Westminster, Mass. I think there are a lot of stuff came out in the papers in the last year, but they were actually, their stuff's super toxic. Because a lot of the stuff that's brought in made into that compost. So it took me about 3 years to recognize that was not a good thing. We then, bought, there was a period where we kind of just got various organic fertilizer inputs, and I was always kind of grasping in the dark and going to NOFA conferences and trying to figure out how to do this fertility thing. But, we went through this whole nutrient density period and really getting into rock dust and, working on all those things. But then I got back to ProGrow again, which is one of NCO's products. And Paul Sachs, who's, I think he's still the CEO of that, I think he's still around, is now, working with a lot of biostimulants and inoculants. And just, my experience going back to ProGrow as something that we put on these plants has really, again, upped our ante. So something to look into. I don't work for any of these companies, but when I find something that works for me, I really like to share it. So rock dust, we did get another 22 ton load and put it all over our 2 acres of vegetables. Yep.
Could you speak a little louder, please?
I'll try to. Can you sit up front?
Then I can't see or write a note because it's too dark.
Oh, yeah, I don't have that loud of a voice, but I'll do my best.
I'm gonna try to see if I can turn the fan down, maybe.
Yeah, it's about you.
I got it.
So anyway, rock dust is, basalt rock dust comes from basalt rock, and it's the tailings from the, John, do you understand how rock dust works? What?
It's magic.
I know, but I mean, what's the process by which rock dust is?
Oh, pulverized?
Oh, yeah, why do we have it available? What are they doing with the basalt?
What's going on with local rock dust, I don't know specifically, but typically it can be a byproduct from other folks that are working. Some of the rock dust I get, these folks are drilling granite and they actually dry drill it. And so what's coming out of it is this super fine rock dust.
Yeah.
What they do, local rock dust is one of the biggest providers, at least that I'm aware of, as far as large quantities of rock dust. What their process is, I would assume it's in the rock. I mean, there's just dust in that whole industry. And if they have a way to collect it, then they do the basalt. As far as this whole paramagnetism, which is a big concept with rock dust, basalt rocks tend to be very good for that. And that's a whole other conference in itself.
And I could never explain it, but paramagnetic aspects are good. But anyway, we get a bunch of this on a regular basis. We got some this past year. We spread it already for 2023. It's got like 99 minerals in it, and it's very, very highly crushed. So the microns are very small, so that it's very bioavailable, especially if you have a lot of microbes. If you don't have microbes, it'll just sit there and do nothing. So anyway, that's
As will any amendment that you put down.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, move on. Where do you get it? I get it from Rock Dust Local.
That's the name of a company?
Yeah,
Yep.
they're in Vermont.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom Vanacore, Vanacore. Okay, you can turn it.
Or the NOFA mass bulk order.
Yeah, that varies.
They do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is our tractor, and this is Cameron and Candido riding the tractor. But I just want to give you a sense of our scale, because people think, oh, I can't do that. It's too large of a scale, or it's too this, or or you guys are too small. Usually at Massachusetts conferences, we're big, but when we go to other states, it's like, hey, you guys are really, anyway, go on. And here's our Rogue hoe. There's Scott and Claire. This is a really nice hoe for a no-till situation. It's heavy. It's got a nice, I should have brought one, triangular head and a nice heavy wood. And you can see here, actually, this is a good picture too, to show you, this was all tarped last spring, this field. And we took the tarps off, and this is what we had left here. This is early. We were planting onions on April 15th, so it's not that late in the season. We put our tarps on in this field like March 15th and took those off, I think about after a month. And so most of this is mostly dandelions that you see here that were coming up, that were crazy coming up. But this is our tool of choice for making beds. We measure out 4-foot wide beds with sticks and strings, and we have a 24-inch pathway in between. And then this for onions, we made 4 rows, but you can see how nice that soil is too. So I'll talk about the tarps later. Okay, go ahead. And straw bales, last year we were able to get a bunch of big straw bales. We got 40 straw bales. We used them all up before the season was out. Go ahead. And those are wood chips. We get those from the town. They deliver them sometimes for not too much money at all. And wood chips are just yet one more wonderful resource. We tend to use the wood chips more on the perennials. They break down a little more slowly than the other things, and they're less likely to tie up nitrogen if they're in a perennial system. Okay. And here's just just shows our grape setup here. We had cardboard and then chips on top of it. It's just kind of show you how we use them. And we harvest our own hay, and we pick it up by hand. Don't have enough land to make it worth, a baler. So here's our ground driven rake. Our son Dan bought that, I don't know, like 30 years ago, and we found it's probably from like 1940 or something. The point being, you don't have to, capitalize in order to do what you need to do. There are always ways to do things on the cheap, especially if you have a lot of people. Okay. And here's a good example of leaves. We go up and down the road. This year, I think we harvested like 36 these big totes that you get compost in, really big ones, potting soil, off the road and on our land and on our woods and stuff. And so leaves are another one of our big resources for mulching. And we, in this case, put them in this hoop house underneath this kale. Last spring, we just actually harvested all that kale about a week ago, and we're starting over again there. But that was these are very nice mulch. You see them inside the hoop house because leaves like to blow away. Another thing you can do is put down leaves and then just put a thin layer of hay or straw or something that's a little heavier on top of it, or wood chips to hold them down.
A lot of landscape guys too also want to get rid of leaves in the fall, and they tend to bring them to you for nothing. You just got to watch out for trash.
Yeah. Yeah, you really have to, sourcing material is a kind of a fun thing to do. Okay.
Yeah, just one comment about leaves blowing away. I mow them and mulch them in the fall, and so they're tiny bits. And when the tiny fragments with water on them, they don't blow away.
They stay down better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay. I think this is just to show you how we mulch heavily, basically. This is garlic here that we just planted in the fall and mulch it really, really heavily, and help the garlic out of the mulch in the springtime when it started to come up around April 1st, and then leave it all there and harvest it. Take off the scapes in the end of June and take off the garlic, harvest the garlic in July. Okay. And again, here's a parsley is one of those crops for us that we start harvesting in June and harvest all the way through November, and we find it really intelligent to do a heavy mulch on something like that. So you just get weed it once, mulch it, and then you're good to go for the rest of the season. Okay. Here we are harvesting leaves on the road. So we happen to live on a scenic road, and most of these trees are oak trees, and so we just have an immense number of oak leaves. We're very lucky to have that resource. But is it too acid? Because I don't have that experience. I think that because, and probably you know some stuff about this too, but, microbes, as it turns out, will change the pH around them in order to make it more successful for them. Is that what you read that too, John?
Yeah, so if you really want to get deep into it, I kind of think the pH story isn't as important as people think it is, because if you think about that root and the pH, if we're on that scale of looking at the root system and what's happening on the pH, as you get away from that root system, you're going to have a variety of pH through that whole system. And the reality of it is the plant is probably modifying the pH in its rhizosphere with its own chemistry in order to get the nutrition that it needs, or to have relationships with the microbial community so that the microbial community is bringing the nutrition to the plant. And the plant is probably going to be regulating that pH. Something like this, as far as a food source, an organic source, and a microbial source, I'm not even going to worry about pH. Once it gets into the growing area, maybe in a compost pile, maybe in a compost tea or something like that. But once you're bringing it out into the real world, the factors that are going to alter that pH are too big.
The fact is, again, that if we remember that, first of all, that the whole microbiological system underground is so incredibly intelligent. We don't have an effing clue, really. We really don't, about what's going on down there. And it's so intricate and it's so intertwined and it's so diverse. And all we need to do is set the table, as they say. So we set the table, we make sure that they have plenty of things to eat, and then they will take care of all that stuff. They're the chemists, they're the biologists, they know what they're doing. And we have such a narrow understanding of what's going on under the ground. And luckily, we're at a point now where there's a profusion of research and knowledge being gained, but I still think we're, really on the very edge.
I think two other points with particularly leaf material, the humic component and the fulvic component that you're bringing in with those leaves are such an important resource, as well as the whole microbial piece.
What's fulvic?
Fulvic acids are another organic acid that is pretty critical for, like, fulvic acid might even be one of the most important organic acids as far as that plant having the ability to absorb nutrition. And humic acid is, another pretty important one.
But they absorb it better with the presence of fulvic acid.
Absolutely.
That's what he's saying.
It increases the efficiency, and you're going to get a lot of fulvic material with that leaf material.
Okay, thank you. It's so good to have you running this workshop with me. Even though you're not.
Even though I was late and I'm a
Even though
technical
you're
idiot.
not techie, So I just wanted to show you, this is a beautiful, I came upon this picture the other day when I was putting together workshops. Damn, this is just what I want to show this is early cover crops. So planted up April 1st, oats and peas. And see how beautiful they are. And just the idea is we want to have as much green growing on the soil as many months of the year as we possibly can. So, this is an opportunity to really do a lot of photosynthesizing in April and May. So, go on. And here's a good example of, it's really fun to work with corn because it's so tall and it's able to shade out, or it's able to keep steady with whatever you put under it. And this is a multi-species cover crop. And as you think about cover crops, and you want to listen to Christine Jones, if you can find her on the internet, she'll talk to you about, why cover crops are so important. But you think there are really 4 basic families of cover crops. One is the legumes, which we're all familiar with, I think, peas and clovers and stuff like that. And then the brassica family, all number of brassica families, and so much of what they do. The legumes will do a lot to fix nitrogen and help bring more nitrogen into the soil. The brassicas are very good at kind of fumigating the soil in a natural way and cleaning up diseases and stuff. And then you have forbs, which are bigger things like sunflowers, like buckwheat. It's kind of a mixed class of things that have big leaves. And those all bring their own capacities into the system. And the fourth one is the grasses, which is corn, of course, is a grass, but oats, buckwheat, oats, barley, rye, all those things. And again, if you're wanting to maximize photosynthesis and maximize your diversity in the soil, we want to feed all the different kind of microbes that live there. We want to have a really multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-age group, multi-everything life system in the soil. And every time you add another kind of plant of those 4 families, you're able to encourage and bring into the system all these different kind of microbes. So play with your corn if you raise corn. Weed it and then get it planted to a multi-species cover crop. And then you can really use that as a really a wonderful fertility spot for next year. Somebody else can go in there and it'll be really rich in it. Okay. So yeah, I was really happy with this one actually. We had potatoes here and then we planted oats, peas, and daikon. And it came up really nicely. And then we ran our chicken tractors over it. And they ate it all up and they pooped on it. Such. Okay.
Question?
Yeah, I just had a question about the timing with the cover crop and the corn.
Yeah.
Did you seed the cover crop after planting the corn? Did you direct seed the corn? Okay, yeah.
About that fall. Yeah. You want to make sure that your cover crops aren't overwhelming your crops. And I'm always like, well, let me just jump in and do it. And many times I've had that problem. So I kind of get excited about things. But yeah, when too big enough. And that the cover crops aren't too thick because they will at some point, overwhelm the plant. Yeah.
So when you're finished with something like that, like corn with a cover crop, are you just like chopping or mowing it down and then tarping it?
So that particular crop last year, that was 2021. It was a great they're going to call succession. We we mowed it down with our rotary mower behind our tractor, and then we put our turkey tractors on that land, and they all went through, moved one day at a time, out the other end, and then we planted it to another cover crop at the end of the season. So it was like if I could do everything like that, so exciting. Yeah, corn's so much fun to work with, and I grew up in Illinois, so where the tall corn grows. So go ahead. Here we are with tarps, and the important thing, first thing you remember is get yourself black sandbags and get yourself a lot of sand, because we spend a lot of time with milk jugs filled with water, rocks, all sorts of things, and this is the way that the real farmers do it. Get yourself a big pile of sand and these black sandbags which you can buy online. And then you can see how close they are, because this particular spot on our farm is really windy. And it's like, I don't know how many times we went out.
Where'd the tarp go?
Yeah, where'd the tarp go? So you can stand, big storm comes, and we can see all this from our window. It's like, okay, there it goes. So you can see how close they are. And these are heavy, heavy bags. So when you're going to tarp, make sure you have plenty of sandbags. Yeah.
What acres do you tarp at a time?
Well, we had last year 13 tarps, and they were 30 by 100. And sometimes we had them all going. So I don't know what that is, but we didn't put that out. And this year I bought 5 more tarps that are 150 by 30. So what it's been able to do for us is we used those early years of the no-till, we were using the hoe a lot and tilling ourselves. This really preps the soil for us, and we can come in and plant it and put the lucky mulch right away. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, are you always, it looks like you're using black tarps there, are you always using black tarps or are you ever using clear?
I don't like clear plastic. I feel like it's too hot.
Is it hotter than black tarp?
Oh yeah, the clear plastic will get up to 130, 140 degrees, it'll burn everything off. These guys, this is a very gentle process. It's very interesting. When we take these off, first of all, there's a lot of animal life under there, voles, and there are, worm castings. Sometimes the entire soil surface is covered with worm castings, and there are snakes under there. So it's not that hot for them. It's hot enough to kind of, it kills off the greenery, it kind of composts under there, and then you're just left with this nice kind of soil structure that's really ready to go. So I've used clear plastic, but I did not like what it did to the soil. It seemed like it was not good.
What's the thickness of the tarp? And where do you get them from?
They're just called black silage tarps, and we got them from Progressive Growers this year. There's another place in New Hampshire, what's Trevor's place?
I don't know.
It's in Hills. Brookdale Fruit Farm, yeah. But and actually, Progressive had a sale at the end of the year, so we were able to get them for a little bit cheaper. But
Are they from that one size, or can you get them different sizes?
they come in many different sizes. Yeah, they're black on one side, white on the other. Yeah.
So do you seed your cover crop before you tarp it or after, or is it a separate field? What are you doing with the different crops?
So what, I don't know that this was the case that year, but I think what we would have done is to have a cover crop. It might have been a winter kill cover crop that was going to die anyway, or it might have been something, this year we planted a lot more rye. Rye will come up in the springtime.
Yep.
And so some of these ones that were a place where we had gotten away from this, we put it over grass. That's another way. We're actually opening up new land with.
Okay, so you're not rotating that into your cover crop.
I don't understand your question.
Or so when I do a cover crop,
Mhm.
and it comes up, and I kill it off with my truck.
Well, when you're, about a month or 2 months before you want to plant that.
Before you plant it.
Yeah. But let it
I'm
grow
just
as
wondering what you do.
long as you can. Yeah. Okay.
One quick thing I would say, I don't do a lot of tarping, but I think it could be beneficial if you had a soil thermometer. To Julie's question, point about like the clear tarps getting really hot. If your temperatures are exceeding 130, which it could, you're gonna kill a lot of microbes that you might be trying to develop. So, depending on what you're using, use a soil thermometer as well, and use that as a gauge as far as what's happening as far as temperature and how deep is that heat penetrating, because that could screw some things up and, take back a lot of what you're trying to encourage.
Yeah. It's always a weighing,
Yep.
which way what's going to be less destructive sometimes, what's
Right.
going to be more beneficial. It's always a bunch of weighing game.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So this year we did put a lot of our, this is an opportunity for me to show off my grandchildren also, but.
I thought you were talking about your pigs.
They were actually, they were writing them after this picture was taken. But these are our green beans right here. And this particular field, we would have them in an area for like a week after the crops was done. We put them in with the green beans. They ate a lot of good stuff, cleaned it all up for us and move on to the next space. We come in, kind of scrape it all, rub it back down again with a, rake or sometimes with the tractor bucket, and then plant it to cover crops after the wet. So my question is, how much damage are the pigs doing to the soil surface? And I'm not really sure, but we try to get them in and out quickly and assume that, that there's weighing what's better for the soil. Is it good to bring in, it is good to bring in manure in a situation like that. I've had pigs in the past and then, really had high fertility the next year. So, but we don't want them to really destroy the soil surface. So it's a bit of a game trying to guess, all this, but my experience was just to put them in here for a short period of time and then flatten it back out again and get it right into cover crops. Yeah.
So how do you decide when to use your pigs versus your chickens and turkeys, or some people use goats?
It's really, we're certified organic, and you would want to probably follow these rules anyway, even if you weren't certified organic, and that is that we have to make sure to not have any manure on the field. If you have a plant like corn, it's only 90 days, afterward, you can harvest the corn and still be certified. If it's a beet or a carrot, it's 120 days. So we're talking in Massachusetts, for the most part, we're talking about end of the season. And in this case, the pigs happen to be close by. If the chickens had been close by, we would have run the chickens over instead. It's a proximity issue. Did that answer that? Right. And here are some turkeys. I didn't have a very good picture of that, but these guys are starting to run across. The things are planted here. And we give them 1 day on this area. They cleaned off all of the greenery, and then we planted cover crops after. So much less potential damage to the soil. And with a turkey or a chicken tractor, those they just move once every day. They move forward. And here's a picture of the. This was in 2021. We had a lot of clover undersow under our tomatoes. I probably planted the clover too thick, actually. But when it came down, we then ran the chicken tractors across here, and then ended up with a really nice residue at the end. If you think back to that pig picture, there were some beautiful crops in the background. That area of the farm in 2022 grew some of the most exquisite crops. I think that, having these clover and then the chickens, and I don't remember if we did any, I don't think we did anything else in the fall because the clover wasn't quite dead yet. They just kind of knocked it down, but it was really, really, high fertility, really fantastic. Probably the best corn of the farm, actually. In 2022 was had happened the year before. Yeah.
What kind of clover?
That was crimson. That's my favorite, crimson clover.
Do you have any experience with Dutch white clover?
It's expensive. Okay. Recipes that we use for our foliar sprays. So again, I'm not a salesperson for AEA. I just know after farming for 40 years, and in the last 6, 7, 8 years, our crops have gotten so much better because we've been using these products that John Kim and his staff have been improving every year. And there are other people, Jerry Burnett, he's a guy, he runs agrodynamics. He's dead now, but they're still running that organization. A lot of technology and putting together these liquid formats of every possible mineral that you might need on the farm, and some combinations with inoculants and stimulants, a lot of health, really wise combination of minerals. And for me, it's the proof is in the pudding. Our customers, long-term CSA customers, wow, the food was better this year than it was last year. Wow, this food is amazing. The keeping quality of the produce in, you can pick it and then keep it in the refrigerator for extended periods of time. Crops that we used to peter out after a month or two, like Swiss chard, for example, this year planted it in May and you're still harvesting it in December. The crops have more longevity in the field. Just on all the markers, things are just, we walk into our Swiss chard patches this year, and there's some incredible sense that I can't even understand visually or even olfactorily that, the iridescence of the crops, and there's this feeling that, and we would all go in there, the staff and the working shareholders, and it's like we were all kind of like buzzing. We had a Tulsi patch, and Tulsi is such an incredible medicinal, but we would just like everybody get high every time we went in there, and just because I think the plants start to do their thing at such a high level that it starts to really resonate in a way that we can't really understand with our 5 senses.
It's contagious.
It's contagious. So anyway, these are a number of things. These are all the basic things we use. And actually, Claire and I, including my partner in crime, the other day we got our recipes from AEA, and we spent like 6 hours trying to organize them into a format that's usable and check with last year's recipes. And we have special ones for every year. We have like, well, what are we gonna do about our cucumbers? Because they bit the dust again last year. And so we get a cucumber regimen or whatever. So it's very intricate, and we have a long document, and we have a weekly spraying schedule, and we refer to it, and we make up all these recipes. probably, I think there are like 45 or 50 recipes that we make up over the course of the season and use those in our sprays. But, it's one of those things that we find is so valuable in what we've come up with here that it's worth it. So if you're a gardener, they have products for gardeners. You can buy 2 kinds of sprays and you can put them on with the, backpack sprayer. So you don't have to do all this intricacy, but we're raising, tree fruit, small fruit, and all different kinds of vegetables. And we want the highest performance from all of them. So that's why we put that energy into it. Did you want to say something?
No.
Okay. All right.
Next one.
So here's another thing that we do. I got a recipe. I think the recipe's on the next slide, but this is a recipe I got from Nathan at ADA for a seed soak. And what we do is soak any one of our vegetable seeds here for 2 to 4 hours in a little of this soak that's in water, and then put them out on a paper towel to dry, and then plant them immediately. So that's kind of to really get the seeds ready to really go with all sorts of vigor. It's another little, I think, what's his name? Elliot Coleman used to call them 1%ers, right? Little ways to really enhance the system. You want to have quick germination. You want to have everybody up and ready to go. Like, let's go. And so that's what the seed soak helps. So it's a recipe's on the next page. I encourage you to take it down and so this is Nathan. And soak seeds for that for about 4 hours. So yeah, I would take this one down if I were you. And it's easy to use. And if you have any germination problems at all, and even if you don't, just try it. And if you don't believe in this, but you want to give it a shot, do half of them, and then do the other half unsoaked and see what kind of results you get. There's always, Derek Christensen always says, just if you don't know what things are, if these things are going to work, do half one way and half the other way. And you can do your own on farm or on garden research, all the time to see what really, if all these claims that people have are worth it.
I will say more of the so-called professionals that are out there are going to say if you do one thing on your farm, it's inoculate your seeds.
It's what? I'm sorry.
Inoculate. This is basically a seed inoculum. And so, getting that microbial relationship with that seed as it's germinating, first of all, it's the most cost-effective thing that you're going to do on your farm, because this is super cheap. And you've exposed all of the seeds that are going out into your growing system with a beneficial inoculum that's going to help that plant process minerals.
Yeah, so this seed crop is like salt water, fancy salt water, and sea stem is mostly kelp, and then rejuvenate is some biologicals and molasses
And the Biocoat Gold.
And the Biocoat Gold, right? That's another thing. So we buy Biocoat Gold, and even if we're too busy or get too hairy to do the soak, we put a little bit of Biocoat Gold into each of our seed packets and shake them up. At the beginning of the season, when we buy the seeds, and then put them back in the freezer, so it's there when it's time to plant. So yeah, this is a real cost effective. Thank you for pointing it out. Purchase right there. Biocoat.
You could certainly put a handful of compost
Yeah.
that,
Compost, right?
well, yeah, and that's going to also go a long way with this. You're basically, these are microbes and food. And as Graham would say, you put your workers out there with a little lunch basket.
A lunchbox, right?
And
Give your workers a lunchbox.
that's what you're doing.
So you keep your seeds in the freezer?
We do. I want it to stay as vital as I can. And if you think about having them on a shelf in your basement and it gets hydrated and dried out, just by the, ambient temperature and hydration of it, that wears them out. We buy them and pop them in the freezer and keep them there all the time. Makes things alive. Yeah.
You have a lot of lowercase letters there, but are those all like products, specific
Yes.
products from AEA?
Yeah, sea crop, rejuvenate system.
Yes, okay, great.
That was just Nathan did that, and I just
Okay.
Copied it, yeah, good point. All right, moving on. Here's our sprayer. Again, it's just a backpack sprayer. Most of these sprayers are usually used to spray all sorts of chemicals on things, but this is a steel, I think. We have a steel, and we also have a solar. We have two backpack sprayers, but they're, again, a low tech, low, I mean, it's like $300 or something. But they're, essential part of our operation. You can see these jugs, these are 2.5 gallon jugs that a lot of the products come in. Some of them come in 5 gallon pails. So that's what they're kind of, and you can buy them in gallon size too. Yep.
Would you recommend buying the higher quality, because I know steel's a high quality brand
Yes.
versus the Ryobi or whatever, for the longevity of it?
Yeah. We have a wonderful guy who is our on-call mechanic. And I trust all of his judgment. He said, yes, steel is a really high quality. Solo is actually a really high quality brand too. I think it comes from some other country. I don't remember where.
I think there's, Sweden maybe or something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I think the other ones burn out. And, you've got to use the nice ethanol-free gas mix and, keep them in really good shape. But yeah, the steel has been done well for us. And Solo too. All right.
That looks like a fogger. Is that a fogger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's for spraying chemicals all over everything.
Yeah. Kill all those pesky mosquitoes.
Yeah, exactly. Here's Jonathan using it. Just spraying water cups. And just, every day, somebody goes out from 6:30 to 7 or 7:30 and sprays some part of our farm. We do everything on the farm every week from May 1st until November 1st. Really high priority. Okay. Oh, why is this corn down? We had a terrible microburst back in August. I can't remember what day it was. But I'll take responsibility for the corn being down. And I just want to say, you can always do a better job. And here's what happened. We kind of let the corn go. It's like, oh, it'll take care of itself. We got all these other things to weed, and we weeded it once and we never thinned it. We were going to come back and thin it and mulch it, and we didn't. This is 2022. 2021 crop was really well taken care of. But anyway, by the time we weeded it, and we actually planted cover crops under it, I think, but they were spindly. And so they didn't have, a good corn plant will be amazingly stocky and really strong. And so this is a lesson to me, when that microburst came through, that half that corn got knocked down. It was really because I wasn't on it earlier. I wasn't having the proper spacing and making sure that, you want your crops to never have a hitch in their growing. So, they want to hit the ground running with those nice seed inoculants, and then they want to grow. And, you provide everything they need to grow as well as they can. Interestingly, this corn did start to, every week it was like,
I'm not dead yet.
and it didn't die. It all came back. We harvested it. They were all parallel to the ground. We had a great corn crop, but it was an excuse actually not to give you the CSA. I said, oh, I can't give them this, so we had to freeze it all ourselves. But anyway, it's always good to be aware of your mistakes and try to do a better job next year. So this is frost tolerance. That's another thing that healthy food has. And by December 19th, we probably had, 8, 10, 12 frosts. And these were in the hoop house, but the hoop house is unheated. It's just plastic, and it's just a little bit cold. It stays just a little bit warmer in there. Mostly not much warmer, but actually there's no wind in there. But we harvested all these crops out of there up until this is 19. So we had remade on it also. But it's just a reminder that one of the other things that you get from having really healthy food is to have frost tolerance. I just want to show the succession. This was a good productive sequence. So where we had, this land had been hayfield, and we just put the tarps down. Go ahead. And then you can see this was grass. So you can see how a lot of real structure in the soil still, right? But we were using those road poles and we dug holes and then we planted squash in there. Go ahead. And there was the squash and we mulched it right away. Again, this is like, you know, life in the fast lane when you're doing everything right. And then go ahead. And there's the harvest we got. I know they were just, these are actually harvested and then laid there. They weren't that close, but they were pretty damn close in the field. And that was from hayfield with a tarp to mulching and planting through the pretty dead grass. It was pretty dead. And then mulching it really heavily and doing all the other things that we do and, you know, harvesting this big crop. So it's, you know, it's nice to show your victories along with your mistakes. Yes.
Did you have cardboard underneath the mulch?
Just not that big.
Just leaf mulch?
Just that was straw, I think, for hay. Whatever it's often whatever we have. I usually use cardboard just under perennials. On, you know, like around fruit trees or grapes or something like that, and then put wood chips on top. Cardboard in the field can be problematic. It's just hard to lay and it doesn't break down when you want it. And, yeah. Go ahead. So this is just a picture show. I wanted to show how this is 2021. I think. Card. And see how big it is. Go ahead.
Shiny.
Yeah. And here it is in the field, really heavily mulched. And you can see they're just monster plants and just really, you know, if you to learn how amazing plants can be when you really give them everything they need, it's just goodness. Yeah. How do you irrigate? We don't. Again, Central Mass, where we are right east of the Quabbin Reservoir, which runs right down the center of the state. And we're right in the middle of the east side. So it's about, I think Massachusetts is like 40 miles long at that point, wide at that point, and probably I think the Quabbin might be 25 miles or something long. They covered up 4 towns to make it back in the 30s. And so we do get some westerly winds picking up water off the Quabbin and giving us more rain than most people. I mean, and we don't have the kind of droughts that you guys have on the Cape. I just hear such horrible experiences that you have, you know, with southeastern Mass, and we are blessed. I think it's one of the nicest places in the state for I mean, you can see if you travel on the Pike in eastern Mass, they're in big drought, and then central Mass is green, and then you go back western Mass is in big drought. So that said, we have good systems, and back when I first started getting into this nutrient density stuff, we actually had drip tape on all of our land. We started doing that. We had tubes and, you know, all across and dripped, and we dripped fertility into the system too. But we only did that for like 4 or 5 years, and then felt like we didn't need to do it anymore because we did have problems with needing irrigation. But now and then, in this past year, when we had a good solid drought for 6 weeks or so, the only thing we noticed was that our apples on our apple trees didn't size up. You know, I think that, you know, incredible need for water was not able to be met, but the vegetables were fine. And it's, you know, the mulch helps a lot, and, you know, just the appropriate spacing so that you're not having transpiration, and cover crops when you can. All those things really help too. And then an organic matter of 10 or 12 or something on top of that. All right, next. This is just some nice basil. We don't have the basil thing down. We oftentimes have problems with our basil. So, you know, got it in at a good point here. Okay. It's just Stu's one of our rookie show leaders. One day when we're out picking. Go ahead. Oh, this is something again, one of the things that it's nice to show when you really can do something really well in a way that you may not see it again, like those potatoes the one year. These peppers had been planted after, I don't know if it was corn or garlic, but it had been heavily mulched and really well taken care of. And these peppers were just, you know, growing like crazy and really giving us an incredible amount of fruit. But then in 2020 was the year that there weren't any airplanes flying because of COVID. And what we found was the sky was clear, it got colder at night on a pretty regular basis throughout that whole season. And we had 4 nights of frost, 19, 20, 21, and 22 of September, which was early. Now we oftentimes don't get a frost until late October, maybe early November. But so we had to go out and pick all these peppers. And I just pulled up one of these plants, so you can just see, you know, I don't, can you see how the incredible, you know, soil structure that was underneath that plant. And then the next picture just shows I think we picked 17 bushels of peppers and we ran out of time and got frozen. Very small area, but it's again, just shows you what you can do if you have everything going in your favor. Okay. Next carrots. Okay. And those are, yeah, what's called? Parsnips. Yeah, you can see how big they are. We don't always get those either. Go ahead. And then this was that was 2021. I think we were getting ready for our. We have a fall share. It's in November, and we were going to have a little series floss. So we just filled our walk-in, and then we filled our root cellar with all this stuff. You know, we was pick for like 3 days straight, and had all this stuff we then gave out in November. So it's just kind of a sign of, again, the amount of bounty that you can really get if things are going in your favor. And this pear traditionally will give us 2,000 to 3,000 pears a year. Last year only gave us 1,000 pears. It was, 2022 was not a good fruit year overall. But I stopped counting at 2,500, I think, in 2022 on that tree. Okay. And just another, this is again, I'd like to take pictures of when things are going well. They aren't always going well, but this is, my ideal with the onions and leeks really well mulched and these green beans and corn over here. This is that corn that ended up with all the great cover crops in it. Okay. And there's our garlic in 2021 is also just out of this world. See the size of it. Go ahead. And this is an apple tree that it was a premium apple tree, and that one had about 3,000 apples on it in 2021. So no apples at all this year. It was just really probably did itself in. We'll see. Hopefully it'll be back in 23. Okay. And some fennel. Okay. And one of our peach trees. So go ahead. And our peas, usually we get 8-foot sugar snaps. We seem to do peas well every single year. We're very excited about our peas. Go ahead. All right, so our goals are a balanced practicality in the moment with longer term soil and ecological improvement while planning for maximum productivity and economic sustainability. So we have to always be thinking, is this good for the soil? Is this gonna, raise the food we need for our CSA or whatever? What's the best overall? And, we all have to make those decisions every day about what's going to be the best, and, thinking about everything involved. Make our farm a place for people to learn how to work in a context of nature, grow a sense of human beings, stretch their personal boundaries, blah, 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 learn to earn economic living, engage in alternative lifestyle. So I think one of the things that we have learned since the pandemic, during the pandemic, a lot of farms closed down and they didn't want anybody on their farm. And we have been rather renegades on this whole topic from the start. And we took anybody who wanted to come work on the farm, people who were good enough to get paid, and then those who wanted to be with the shareholders. Continue to have meals together every day. That was one of those things that people was like, hey, don't be eating with each other. That's just too dangerous. And what we have found over the last 2020, 21, 22 is a whole level of, I'm going to say intimacy that has developed on this farm, our farm, where people are really kind of growing with the farm, kind of, become part of the organism. And it's very exciting to involve people in such a way that they feel like they're really making a difference in the world. And we have kids who come from a local program for it's a institutionalized for either sex or violence, and they're state-run program, and we have old people that are my age, and we have young people, and we have people from all over who kind of found our farm. So it's very exciting. I'm very happy with the way things are right now. Engage in a very diverse system that includes annual and perennial vegetables, herbs, tree fruit, small fruit, chickens, pigs, turkeys, mushrooms. Goal of building and improving the carbon balance in the soil. So I like diversity. I always have. Kind of get bored easy, kind of hyperactive person, move from one thing to the next. But it works well in a farming system. And you can do this on however big your farm is. You can have all sorts of diversity. It's really, I always say, if you don't have room for livestock, remember the worms are livestock. So do whatever you can to encourage as many worms as you can. And there's your livestock. Raise the food of the highest nutrient quality possible. And take a stand and live a life of fearlessness in the face of pandemics that celebrates enhancing the gut biome to do its job, supported by crops that are supported by a diverse and healthy soil biome. So soil biome, human gut biome, they work together. And when we aren't taking care of our soil, it's sick. And if we aren't taking care of our bodies, it's sick. And my answer is not what's it called?
Pesticides.
No.
Vaccines.
Vaccines. My answer is really, build your health, build your gut health, and build it with good food, and hang out with a lot of people, because people actually are community beings, and we don't do well isolating from one another. Right. Oh, and as a farmer, promote practices and principles that put forth the true community medicine. Right, so I'm rather passionate about that. I have been for quite some time. All right. Do I have another one on there? Oh yeah, practices to remember. Multi-species winter kill cover crops, late August, late September, intersown in living crops or in finished crop areas. Intersown crimson clover and shorter cover crops early under brassicas, tomatoes, corn, anything that can enhance, anything that's tall enough, starting in early July. Early cover crops on areas that won't be planted until June, like oats and peas. Using silage tarps strategically throughout the season for succession crops, and if grass has gotten ahead of you, silage tarps have really saved us a few times. It's like, oh, cover that all up, and we'll come back in 4 weeks and try again. Haven't gotten it all there yet. Cardboard and hay over the winter where grasses take over, or improve fertility is particularly wanted. And as I said to Mary, cardboard and hay or cardboard and chips on your perennials will keep stuff from coming up for a little while longer than if you just put chips down. Leaves, hay, wood chips for mulch. Maximize keeping the soil covered. Living is best, or dead as necessary. So living things on your soil as long as you can. If you for whatever reason don't have something growing there, then cover it with a mulch. Animals in rotation whenever and wherever possible, and well-targeted foliar sprays and soil drenches. So that's kind of like things that we do on our farm. I try to do, and we try to have room for that. All right, and one more picture. This is some of our staff. This is Claire, who's been with us for 15 years. This is her daughter, who's hiding behind her, Maggie, and Jonathan, who's been here just 1 year. And Lori is a working shareholder. But and this is our 5-ton truck, got red tailgate, gray side, for green here. We got it for $2,000. So again, you don't have to break the bank. You don't have to have one of those new fancy trucks. Buy as you can afford things, and don't go into debt. That's right. That's it. Some more time if you have any questions or comments or yeah.
How do you get the sweet potatoes to grow? I do. Grow a little, fatter, lighter. I can get them to germinate and grow some, but to get them to grow fatter and lighter.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't know their specific fertility needs different than other things. Do you know, John's?
I'm sorry, I was looking at the
Oh,
chat.
Sweet potatoes. I mean, ours have been doing well for the last 3-4 years. We've really gotten really nice big potatoes. The biggest problem is bolls with our sweet potatoes. So I don't know what we've done particularly different than anything else. We do the drenches and all that, and then we mulch them really heavily. Then we come back and in September and harvest them all, or October.
Pretty much with the hay or
I think this year was hay. Yeah. I don't know if they have particular needs, more specific needs than other things, but whatever we're doing is working. So that's not very helpful.
Just do what she's doing, and she doesn't know what she's doing.
well.
Just do everything.
Ignorance is bliss.
Those drenches in the morning must help too.
Yeah, and the foliage, yeah. And we also drench, part of the program is to drench the soil, you know, so we foliar all the plants that they're, every once in a while, every bi-weekly, we'll drench the soil with another mix of minerals and stuff. So, you know, we give them everything we can. Yeah. Or you just, I would say in the vegetable growing area, they're not permanent because we're constantly like, you know, running chicken tractors and turkey tractors through there. We get out our sticks and our strings and measure them out every year again. Kind of a hassle, but you know, it works.
And you, the 2 acres of cultivated crops you had on the first slide, does that include across the street or is that just what we see?
No, that was, it is across the street. There's a ½ acre across the street and about an 1.5 on our side. I'm sorry.
You piqued my interest when you mentioned Mass Natural. 8 to 10 years ago, I got a load of their stuff, and a decline in my own garden corresponded with that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether, if it was 8 to 10 years ago, is all the stuff, the bad stuff, probably leached out, or is there some that's persistent?
So here's the thing, I'm a fan of, I mean, at some level, I'm a fan of ignorance is bliss. Don't really want to find out. But at another level, I think using things like humicarb and rejuvenate and any kind of, what are those called? Those little black things, things that people used to put on their soil a lot.
Humates?
Humates.
Oh,
Using humates in your soil and then really building up the, I mean, actually, I think AEA has some products, OP8. I think they have a few products for contaminated soils, but it's really about, you know, what John used to say when I used to ask him about that, because I was always trying to figure out for NOFA how we can help people who have contaminated systems, how we could do it better. And, you know, he said he didn't know at that time, it was probably 2009, it was a long time ago, but that it's understanding that the more complex you have your soil is, the more likely cadmium, for example, and lead are just going to be tied up in the soil, and they're not, the plants aren't going to take them up. It's when the soil, you know, when the nutrition is high in the soil, a lot of that stuff is not going to be taken up. I know that with like glyphosate and things like that, that you can burn that off really with good, with rejuvenate is a good one. I know, I'm pretty sure that things that a lot, spray that on there, and then the microbes eat it up. I just saw a thing on the news where they have a plastic eating microbe that they're, did you see that?
yeah. And there's probably a microbe out there to deal with any kind of toxin that we're putting into our environment. We just don't know them all. So diversity is key. Carbon is also key, having carbon in your soil, because carbon is basically a magnet. So to Julie's point, a lot of these toxins, if they're bound to carbon,
Okay.
then they're probably not going to go into our plant.
Yeah.
Because your plant would prefer to have calcium, but it'll take in lead if it doesn't have enough calcium. I think, for example, I think is it those two? Do you know the stuff? Yeah.
Oh, well, the compost problem with
No,
PFAS?
well, no, the
Or,
problem with, I mean, the situation was, I know, for example, that fluoridation of the water was so bad because it would replace, fluoride replaces calcium in the teeth. And, that's a situation where some of these more toxic minerals will push aside the ones that really need to be in there. But if you have adequate of calcium, for example, I mean, I didn't even talk about that at all. Just sufficient calcium is, forget NPK. We want to make sure we have enough calcium in the soil. That's the starting thing. That's William Albrecht. If you want to do some reading, read William Albrecht's work from the 19 teens, 20s, 30s, 40s.
Read anything before 1940.
Yeah, anything before all the chemicals came out, really. So you should, it's a huge area to study and understand, but the bottom line is make sure you have enough calcium in your soil, and everything else is secondary to that. So I don't know if I answered that, but
Yes, thanks.
Acidic soil radiation for lead, so a lot of carbon in the soil really helps the plant not pick up a lot of lead.
great.
What natural sources of calcium in your soil?
Well, calcium lime is pretty cheap. Gypsum is also a very good source. That also, gypsum has in it also sulfur,
Sulfur.
and sulfur is really important for nitrogen, the biggest thing, to be able to, become available to the kinds of proteins. There's a lot of carbonatite is a nice rock dust that you can get. That's really high in calcium.
Aragonite.
Oregano, yeah, give a question or an addition.
I have, I think, water soluble calcium in native addictions.
Yeah.
It's a Korean natural farming method, and
Yeah.
I helped me a lot. Something that asked about sweet potatoes. And I felt like that made a difference.
How do you get more thing when it comes to extra?
You basically have to bust them up really fine.
Vinegar.
Yeah, vinegar break. I don't understand the chemistry of it. You break it down with vinegar with like some kind of breathable top for a while, and then you dilute that solution in water. When you go to water your plants, you do like a fertilizer system, I guess you would put it in there, or with a can you dilute it with a little bit of water.
Yeah, a whole other wonderful study is Korean natural farming, and that all of this, it's doing your own microbe thing. That's, and again, a lot of the stuff, we actually did we did a conference on it one time back in the day, but there's stuff, I actually wrote something that's on the NOFA website still. It's got all the recipes for how you can make all these things. But this is like using a little bit of biology to, spark the whole system and not the whole system. Yeah. Sure.
I'm wondering how you open up fields that you haven't touched before, suggestions for cover cropping, seedings and no tillage.
The best way we've done it in recent years is to use tarps. So in the case of opening up hay fields, when we did it, we put the tarp down like early. It doesn't hurt to put it down in the fall, but just make sure you got all the sandbags on. But I found that was the easiest way. We have tried like putting on cardboard and hay, but it didn't really work that well. The tarps seem to do the best trick for us. And also, before putting down a tarp, there's some combination, I think the Rejuvenate and C-stem combination of spraying that, mow it, get as short as you can, and then putting that with a little Spectrum, I think. Spectrum is another AEA product that they use to help get that soil killed. But what happens is the way it works is those things together build up the mostly the bacterial communities really well. So that once the tarp's on there and the plants start to die, the bacteria start to really grow and they can eat all that stuff up. So, but I found really good success in the 2 cases that 2 or 3 times that we've done that to open up land.
Seeding, once you've got it opened up, do you do any sort of bed preparation?
Well, just our sticks and strings, and then holding them rows to put whatever we want to put in them. If you remember back to that picture I showed of those 2 guys that were digging holes with the squash, and I think you might want to think about when you open up a new land, put something big in there, put potatoes in there, or squash, or, you know, something where you're gonna put in plants, rather than trying to raise carrots, for example. Use a sod busting kind of plant that'll really come in and help you with that process. I would not plant carrots after I open up.
Raise my grass and do it. Covers grasses, that on the land that is like just opened up.
How would you plant?
Bring
Your cover crop mixes, Julie, like the variety of, you know, the different cover crop mixes. Are you using any equipment to do that, or just broadcasting?
No, just broadcasting, but I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, I guess if you're drilling or just broadcasting.
How are you actually planting
Oh,
your cover crop seeds?
We just, during the rainstorm or before a rainstorm, I was broadcasting. And breaking them in. Does Norbert have a question?
I don't know. And I was just gonna check. We've got 3 people out there in Zoom land. If anybody has a question, looks like you might have to come off mute, but feel free to ask if you can even hear me. It doesn't look like anybody's coming off.
Anybody else have any questions?
Are the slides going to be available?
What's that, the slides? That's
They
a NOFA question.
should be. Did you send them in?
Well, yes. I mean, I think David has them.
So if David has them, and we can try to, I'll make a note to make sure that David gets them. It might not be immediate, but we should be able to get you the slides.
Okay, thank you very much. This was great.
Getting us the slides, is that like they'll be available in the app or they'll be emailed?
That would be, actually, hopefully, he can put them on Hoova, and then y'all can pick them off of that. And I think that, again, I'm a technical idiot.
You're technically
I-
uneducated, my dear.
I do think that that was the plan. Anybody that submitted their slides, he'll organize them, put them on Hoova. You guys should be able to take them off that. Certainly the video content, it usually takes us a week or 2 to format all that. And then will get distributed onto a YouTube channel as well.
Is there any questions?
I was just gonna ask about your apples. Do you use any of the usual organic sprays like copper, whatever people do?
Well, we don't have to do anything, as you don't either, right? So we don't have, although our peaches oftentimes are sale quality looking, our apples usually aren't. But we give them out to our CSA. You know, I've had people in the CSA say, oh, shit, but I've never had such good applesauce, you know, so that kind of thing. So I would say our apples are not up to sale quality, but the taste is phenomenal. And then we make a lot of apple juice, applesauce. We make, you know, 300, 400 quarts of applesauce a year. And last, I think in 21, we made maybe, I don't know, 100 gallons of cider. Yeah, that's my answer. I'm not into, my final interest is not whether it looks nice. It'd be great if it did. And most of our vegetables look fantastic. Not all of them do. We're still working on that. We might get there with the apples too, but I don't know. Apples are a little bit more of a challenge. And, yeah.
We have, on our, property, we have like about a dozen fruit trees, for apples, peaches, pears. And a lot of times they get tested.
You get what?
Tests, like little, larvae and bugs and all that. Is there a way, something to do about that? Because it makes it really not good.
Yeah, so we have found that growing the fruit trees is the hardest thing to do. And we put in fruit trees back in 1980, and a lot of them we didn't get any harvest off for like until 2010, when we started using foliar sprays and stuff. So I have at various points have made a lot of K&F compost and put it under the trees. That really helped, and then massive amounts of wood chips. And sometimes we've actually planted, once the wood chips are broken down a bit, we planted cover, a nice perennial cover right in the, underneath the tree. So we have those growing up. We run our chickens through there, our turkeys through there. And so there's that manure in the system. We plant comfrey under them because comfrey will attract a lot of beneficials. And then we really have this really assertive spray program, you know, from the minute the trees before they start leafing out, before blossom, and then all the way up to the end. Because if you have a tree, like you think about that pear, and that pear does that 2,000 pear thing every year, has for, I don't know how long. It's just incredible how much. You think about having that many children, right? And having them all nursing on you all the time. And you know, it's a huge burden on those trees. And so we just have, our job is to help make that plant as strong as it can be. And so that means, you know, sufficient calcium for starters to build the cell walls and build it. And in season, you have to have enough potassium because those fruits are all loading in potassium, and potassium stays in there. And you need the, you know, the molybdenum and cobalt and all these other trace minerals. Manganese is another fruiting, you know, mineral. You need all this stuff. And I also use dry amendments, whatever we can do to support their, you know, them it working for them. So it doesn't always work. We had last year we actually had firelight for the first time. And some people say, well, go cut out all those trees, you're gone. But we just cut out the bad stuff and used a special fireblight spray that we had that had a lot of sea minerals in it. And the fireblight didn't come back this year. So, you know, it's a rough world out there for fruit trees. We use also standard stocks. Definitely don't like the dwarf ones. They don't have any capability to gather the nutrients from the soil that they need. I mean, you know, the trees need to have as much access. It's like cutting off both of their legs and sticking their hand in the ground to get what they need. You know, I always really advise against the dwarf stocks. Semi-dwarf are a little bit better, but the standard stocks are going to let that tree grow to its full capacity. So those are just some other things to think about with fruit trees.
Julie, we got one question from the Zoom, which is from Mabel. And do you measure bricks
No,
or nutrition in any fashion?
no, I just eat it.
So you measure it with your nose and
Let it
mouth.
come. Yeah. No, I'm not I know you're a big, you like to use all those tools, but I'm not about tools at all. I'm just like, yeah, not away without it.
And your son doesn't use any of his tools that
No,
you're
he
placing.
doesn't. So, just wanted to say, we're almost out of time, but if anybody ever wants to come, the deal, I'll talk to you as much as you want. If you come and work with me, you can come on, usually on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. Right now, it's Monday and Friday mornings. I'll serve you breakfast if you come early enough, and serve you lunch if you stay through lunch. And you're always welcome. And Alex is also over there. Yes. And we're gonna have kittens next for 3 months too, so we have nice cats. So, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, guys. Don't forget about the auction. Don't forget about our soil health tables up on the 3rd floor of the student center. And I will make reference to 3 podcasts that I think are super useful because Julie made reference to a lot of them, which is Nutrition Farming, which is Graham Sate's podcast. Advancing Eco Ag, which is John Kemp's podcast. Sorry. The very first one, well, it's Nutrition Farming, which is Graham Sate.
GRAEMESAIT.
And that's phenomenal. And you need to listen to it like 8 times.
And he's an Aussie and he tells dirty jokes also.
Yeah,
Texas jokes also.
yeah.
Yes.
Advancing Eco Agriculture, which is John Kempf, which is KEMPF. And then Christine Jones has like a 4-part series on green cover seed. Green Cover Seed is the company. They're a cover seed company in the Midwest. You might have to look at YouTube to find that on their channel, but there's a 4-part piece with Christine Jones that's also.
But you
pretty-
can also look up Christine, you can hear her at various conferences. There are a lot of YouTube. She's really good.
Yep. And I think that's all I got for y'all. Thanks and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.